Currently, at the moment, within the world, there are over 38 million internally displaced people, many of those without access to adequate shelter. Shelter itself forms one of the basic human needs for survival. As a result of the two recent earthquakes in Nepal, over 600,000 homes were destroyed or damaged, leaving those families without adequate shelter and also forcing those families to find temporary shelter solutions. Now imagine you as an architect, as an architecture student, as a planner, being able to use your skills to design shelter solutions, to being able to meet these needs of these communities and these people. Imagine being able to use your skills to be an agent of change, to provide access to shelter for those people in need. Come with me now on a journey where we will see that these opportunities exist. These opportunities exist for you to be able to provide your skills and to be able to use your skills to meet these needs of these communities and these people. Just a basic outline of that this lecture will take is, first we'll look at the role of the architect within the humanitarian sector, within the humanitarian sphere. We'll then move on to introduce via Builtworks in Nepal. We've been working in Nepal now for 10 years alongside our project partner, Aussie Action Abroad, and we've been able to really develop a real good catalogue of work, which I'll showcase briefly, and that was used as a foundation whereby we were able to provide an effective, or will be able to provide an effective response to one village that's been affected by the earthquake, and we'll talk about that as well. Humanitarian architecture. How do you define humanitarian architecture? Humanitarian architecture is really working with people or a community in need to provide an architectural solution to meet that need. And here we have two ends of the spectrum, if you like. One end we have a community development project in Nepal, which we undertook, which was to build a small church for a community. And at the other end of the spectrum we have an image there taken from the Zatari refugee camp for Syrian refugees. Each end of the spectrum, but both equally important and also both requiring the skills of planners, requiring the skills of an architect and a designer to be able to provide solutions. Developing world. I like to use this graphic in my presentations because it really hits home that over 80% of the world live in the developing world. And as you can see by the shades of green there, which this map shows as being the more advanced economies, the more advanced economies are really in a minority. And we can see that those in transition are also in a real minority as well. The majority of the world lives in the developing world. So again, that's just to form a context to which we'll be talking about. Internally displaced people, which I mentioned in my brief introduction, we can see that, as I mentioned before, over 38 million people currently have internally displaced, either by conflict or by natural disaster, without access to adequate shelter. Those figures are quite staggering and quite sobering, I think. Just a few stats to set some scenes. Over 1 billion people live in slums, which we also call the urban poor. In developing countries, there are 2.5 billion people that are forced to rely on fuel wood or dung for to meet their needs. And there's an image here taken from a home in Goshinkali, which is a small Gurung village in Lamjung region. You can see inside their home, that's literally the kitchen, a hole in the ground and some fuel used for cooking there. Needless to say that the home fills up with smoke, and more often than not the females are doing the cooking, and there's respiratory problems that form as a result of that. There are some good NGOs who are doing work to trying to get chimneys installed in those in those homes. The basic human needs, which I also mentioned, is that shelter being one of those basic human needs. And as architects, we're in a really good position to be able to provide good shelter solutions to meet those needs, and where you can use your skills to bring about that sort of change. Two images here, one which is Maslow's diagram. We can see that shelter being one of the basic needs, and then from that we see that self-actualisation actually really forms. But here we see a new camp for Syrian refugees in Jordan. We can see an image there of the shelter solution, which unfortunately has been placed in this context, which is, I don't think, is that great. That'd be like little microwave ovens in the hot Syrian desert there, which unfortunately the refugees are relying on for their shelter solution. The role of the architect in the humanitarian sector, not only for shelter solutions where you can use your skills, but you can also use your skills in terms of coordinating, planning, to be able to plan for pre-disaster and post-disaster response. There are some great groups called REDR, which I'll talk about at the end of my presentation, whereby you can join their register and use your skills to bring about change and meet those needs. Some images here. We have a refugee camp in Somalia, set out on the basic grid system. An image here of the UN cluster system, which I'll talk about shortly in the presentation as well. We can also see design and build project in India, which AWF run, called the Anganwadi project. There's just an image there as well of the design and construct solution there for the school. Community development. I'm really passionate about community development work, and born out of a long-term relationship. We've been going back to the same region for 10 years. When I talk about my projects shortly, you'll see that. But the same region for 10 years, to build on those long-term relationships, and out of those long-term relationships, we're able to get work done. We're not just going in, doing something and going, and the community are kind of like, wow, what happened? We're really about building those relationships. And as you can see here, we have a school from the initial meeting in 2008 to the completion in 2011. So it's a long process to build this school for Goshen-Kali, which has no power, and so a real long-term commitment. Just a few quick stats about Nepal to set the scene. So the world's only official Hindu state. So in terms of size and population, imagine 2 Nepals approximately fitting into Victoria, with more population of Australia. So you can see that it is quite dense, even though out in the rural areas it doesn't feel that dense. But we have roughly about 27 million people living in Nepal, squeezed into half the size of Victoria. So, and the Kathmandu Valley there, over nearly 2 million people. Just a few images of how Nepal was and how it is now. You can see the top image on your top left. You can see in 1960, that's an image taken of the Kathmandu Valley from near Monkey Temple, Swayambanath, and an image taken from recently of the same region. So we can see over 60 years there's been this explosion of a chaotic beauty of this myriad of unplanned development. And down here we have Pashupatinath in 1960 and Pashupatinath today. Here we can see Pashupatinath Hospice, the hospice associated with the main Hindu temple, and we've done some work there, which I'll show you some images of shortly. And as I mentioned to you, there's some issues associated with 60 years of unplanned development, some of those being the infrastructure not keeping pace with the development. We have, and that's quite often been reflected now, the sewer lines, which weren't that great to begin with, have often not been damaged in some areas of Kathmandu. And the migration from the rural areas to the city is a problem that all developing world countries are facing at the moment. Just to set the context now of our work which we'll be doing at the end of the year with some earthquake response. As I mentioned, and I've mentioned a few times, for 10 years we've been going back to Nepal, taking groups of architects and students in to undertake community development work. And that's formed a really, really good foundation for us to now spread our wings into earthquake response across some areas of Nepal. We started off in the Lamjung region, and we've now gone into wider Nepal. Here's a map of Nepal. We can see the Lamjung region here in the ACAP region, the Annapurna Conservation Area. And we have now been able to do some work in Itahari, down on the Terai region, hopefully Kakavita at the end of the year for Mighty Nepal, and in the Dolaka region as well. So through 10 years of knocking on doors and through 10 years of developing this relationship, we're now able to spread our wings a bit wider rather than just the Lamjung region. So with regard to the trip, we spend a few days in Kathmandu at the start, and then we launch up to the areas in the village. So we have a look at Baldanath, which is the largest Buddhist stupa, and then Pashupatinath, which is the main Hindu temple, and amazing sights and amazing places to visit and soak up that beautiful atmosphere. At the start, we hop on a bus and we head up to Bulbula. We usually base our projects out of in Bulbula, then we spread our wings to villages around the Bulbula region, around the Lamjung region. There's some images of Bulbula, beautiful village beside the Masiandi River. And I'll just look at some of the projects now that we've done. In 2006 and 2007, when I first took a group over of architects and students, we built a toilet and shower for the village for the little community in Bulbula, and that's now used for festivals. When we camped there, we're able to use that as well. So really good work, hands-on construction. So students getting there, really getting stuck into it, and a really good result. It's still standing, and there's some images last year. We did a little bit of repair work to that as well. Some stonework which we installed at the bottom there, and really good result. Also in 2006 and 2007, we did some work in Bahadunda, and our first time to Sirung. So in Bahadunda, we installed some water tanks, and in Sirung, we concreted the floors of a school. Again, very small intervention, but the school had just literally gravel and dirt for their floors in their school. So we concreted those. The concrete had to be brought in cement had to be brought in by donkey, and then once the floors were flat, the desks had to be repaired, because the desks were kind of used to uneven floor, and then they had to be made straight. So here's an image of Sirung in your down the bottom there, a beautiful Gurung village. We then went on to 2007 and 2008, where we built a water enclosure for Bulbula. So the dry season in Nepal is the winter, and that village was facing water problems in the winter. So we installed a water collection facility, plumbed it into the main line, so brought some water bladders over from Australia, so so now they have an uninterrupted water supply. And there's some, you can't go to Bunnings and order 10 lengths of timber, so each length of timber has to be cut down. There, and the guys have got their safety crocks on, and they're working away with their saw. In Goshinkali, we started to build the school in 2008 and 9, and you can see doing some earthwork. The school wanted to do a complete excavation and a complete cut, and we convinced them to climb the school up the site. So rather than doing a massive volume builder cut and fill, we managed to sort of step the site, and that's the result of the earthworks there. So now the school was probably complete in 2011. They're now working alongside an NGO because the initial idea was that large solar cells will be placed on the side of the school, and that each child will be given a little light so that they then come to school, plug the light in, and then it charges up while they're doing their lessons, and they go home and they've got a light that they can study with. And so I understand that's now starting to happen. That the solar cells will now be installed on the side of the school. Continuing on now, in 2009 and 10, we continued on with the school construction, and in that year we started to build a kindergarten in Sarung. I headed over in the middle of the year and did some site measure, and at the end of the year we had some design workshops where we designed the kindergarten for the village. And before we headed up to Sarung, we had some little design crit there in Bulbulay. And these are the sketches which we came up with, and the drawing. And then when we got out on site, we had to re-sketch things because things slightly changed. And we can see the guys now under constructing that, working alongside local tradesmen and knowledge sharing. So we were able to install polythene barrier under the dry wall. As a way of preventing rising damp. It doesn't usually happen in the rural areas, don't usually get the polythene barrier. But again, simple intervention, simple design, knowledge sharing, but incredibly important to avoid the rising damp in the kindergarten. And there's a larger shot there of the guys working alongside the local tradies doing the drywall construction. 2010-11, we had a international competition with EWB to design a pump system whereby the river down here, school up here, to pump water from the little stream up to the school so the kids could wash their hands after they go to the toilet. And that's now been completed and really successful. Here's in 2010-11 we continued on with the kindergarten construction and again with the Goshinkali school. So again, reinforcing this whole notion of going back to the same areas, working in the same areas to build those long-term relationships. In 2011 and 12, we converted a storeroom to a kindergarten for a school in Mongla. We also did some water testing around the area as well. Some water is not bad, other water is pretty bad, so we're able to do some water testing. Again, and here's an interesting image here. Installing polycarb roofing sheeting in each of the classrooms. So one of the first things that we do when we go to a school is replace one of the sheets with a clear plastic sheet to allow light to come into the classrooms, because quite often the rural schools are quite dark. They don't have electric power, they don't have lights in the schools. So that to provide that natural light to enhance the space is quite important, and that also improves the learning environment and then the learning of the children as well. In 2012-13, we were able to do 4 projects. The first one being a church for a small Christian community in Bulbulay, and a little Tadeo Ando inspired light wall at the back, and then we completed a school at Mongoladea. There's just some updated images of the church now complete. In that year, we also did another water collection facility for a village called Dungay. Again, quite a successful project, and did some school repair to the south of Kathmandu. In 2013-14, we had 2 groups from Adelaide University come along on the trip and include that as part of their degree. So we had some design, so they had it as part of a design studio. So where we were able to hook in with Adelaide Uni, so they were able to, two groups were able to design 2 mothers groups halls, and then come at the end of the year and build those facilities. Really good outcome, and really good working with that university. So we can see that after the end of the construction period, the Mothers Group Hall in Cootee South nearly complete, and the Mothers Group Hall in Tar nearly complete. So the idea of the community development work being that we'll go in, we'll do so much, or we'll do as much as we can in the construction period, and then the community will continue on. So we're not building the whole thing for them from scratch, where they're kind of again not involved. It's this whole idea of helping them to construct a facility, so therefore they can say that they've done it themselves. Incredibly important that the community has a sense of ownership of that work. So just a larger image now of the Mothers Group Hall in Cootee South, using blockwork, concrete blockwork being again in the lower areas of the lower village areas, becoming more and more popular as a construction material. So we were again able to do the polythene barrier to stop the rising damp, and to teach the local tradesmen how to do engaged piers, which we also taught them how to do on the church, a different group of tradesmen. So again, teach them how to do engaged piers in the blockwork. Incredibly important knowledge sharing techniques. And in 2014, we again toilets for the kindergarten in Dungay. Itahari, the project at Itahari was a fantastic project. What that was for an NGO called Mighty Nepal. Mighty Nepal are a large NGO in Nepal that rescue girls from sexual slavery and trafficking, and they have a transit home down in the Terai region, and we were able to rebuild their toilet and shower facilities for them. A really important project. So that was the first one that we've done for Mighty Nepal. So my goal now is that every year when we send teams over and take teams over, that we'll have one group do one project for Mighty Nepal, so that over a period of time that the transit homes or other areas will be worked on. One of the projects, hopefully at the end of this year, if we can get enough people, will be doing some work on their hospice in Kakavita, which is down south of Nepal. Just to, again, in focus, went over in the middle of the year, measured up the transit home. There's some existing facility or existing condition images of the transit home amenities, and these are the completed images now. Great work, great project. Really good learning experience for us as well, because the first work that we'd done in the Terai, different conditions than working up in the mountain areas, quite humid, quite hot, and had to face issues like the rendering not drying as quickly as we would normally be used to. So there was those sort of construction associated issues that we had to face and had to learn. Just an update on in 2014. So that the Mothers Group Hall in Cootee South, which looked like that at the end of our time working on it. So the community was able to then take that and complete, and there's some images there of the completed Mothers Group Hall that the community has then worked on and completed. So which is a fantastic outcome. Really good example of the community development project where the community is. It takes a really good ownership of the work. Toilets in Dungay finished, and I mentioned the work at Pashupatinath Hospice. We reinstalled some netting around some of the patient annex areas and rebuilt the roof for the hospice. Unfortunately, the silicon is being eaten by the monkeys, and so if anybody knows how to stop monkeys eat silicon, let me know. But that's a really good outcome. And one thing that we're really proud of is that the Pashupatinath Trust has invited us back to continue on doing work there. So really good inroad into that work. And last year we had a few groups head over again, concreting some other rooms in Sirung and replacing a roof to the school. It's not a bad view from your work site, and no, really good outcome. And constructing a community space in Bulbule and doing some work at Ananda Devi School. After that, we go on a short trek, and but that might have to rethink that at the end of this year. We always go to Bhaktapur as a way of hooking up with the Engineering College in Nepal. We have 2 students from Nepal Engineering College come with us in each group. So each group of Australian volunteers has 2 architecture students from Nepal Engineering College associated with that. So really linking up with the Nepali architecture students and impacting their lives and their architecture as well. There's some images of some of the temples around Bhaktapur. Unfortunately, the Vatsala temple doesn't exist anymore. In Kathmandu, we go to the just some images around some sites around Kathmandu. We Freak Streets, where the Beatles hung out in the 60s, and the Garden of Dreams, which was an old restored Rana garden. Okay, so I usually head over in the middle of the year to set up some of the trips with Graham Kent from Aussie Action Abroad, and again, working well alongside those communities. Just to summarise community development work before I head on to the work that we're going to be doing with regard to the earthquake. So we respond to a need and provide an architectural solution to a need. We work alongside the communities. I meet with the communities in the middle of the year. We get an understanding of what they need. We will so in other words, taking an architectural brief, if you will. We then come back to Australia, do some design work, email our Nepali staff a set of quantities. For example, if we need so many blocks or sand, so we make sure that all that material is there on site when we get there, so that when we arrive on site we can work alongside the local tradesmen and start constructing straight away. Again, really understanding the community's need and working alongside them is incredibly important. I think that good design techniques have an acultural universality about them. In other words, if it's a good design technique in Australia, it's a good design technique in Nepal. And what I mean by that is your basic things like soil orientation, basic construction techniques like polythene barriers to stop rising dams. So there are these techniques which are acultural. So we have small interventions to large interventions. So things like providing natural light to classrooms, incredibly important architectural intervention, to providing larger facilities, and again using those knowledge sharing techniques and those construction sharing techniques. Okay, on to our response to the earthquake. There were 2 earthquakes recently in Nepal. On the 25th of April, the first major earthquake struck in the Gorkha region, the epicentre being just above Bar Park, in the Bar Park area. So as I mentioned, there are over 8 million people affected by that earthquake, and over 600,000 homes destroyed or damaged, forcing people to flee and seek alternative temporary shelter solutions. The majority of the temporary shelter in the regions that we were able to see when we went over recently has been established. So that provided shelter from the monsoonal rains. But we're now faced with a very cold winter coming up. So these people will feel the cold. So there's going to be another wave of hurt, another way, and hopefully they'll be able to survive that in their temporary shelters. On the 12th of May, there was another earthquake near the Dolakha region, and the map that you see on your right is a map from the Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs by the UN, and what we're seeing there is areas which are inaccessible by road and require helicopter to go in there. When we were over recently, we I was speaking with a guy from Ocha, and what he was saying is they're looking at helicopter drops into some of those areas. So they're looking at helicopter dropping materials, helicopter dropping porters in there, so the porters will slide down, and then they can bring up materials into those hard to reach areas that way. So there are things that are going on in order to reach those areas. But that just paints a small little snapshot of the earthquake. 3 stages of disaster response, typically rescue, relief and recovery. So we've gone through the rescue phase where specialists are called in, and people with those specialist skills rescue people from the debris. Then move into a relief period where there's a short-term focus on safe temporary sanitation and safe temporary shelter. That the lines between relief and recovery tend to blur in a sense that we have a temporary shelter in some of the hard-to-reach areas is probably still being erected or probably still being put up. That temporary shelter will then transition into more permanent shelter, and there's a program by the government of Nepal. They're looking at about a 2-year turnaround, a 2-year focus before some of the more permanent shelter can be installed. There's these, they're grappling with all the issues of how do you build an earthquake-resistant home in rural areas. All those design permutations and combinations are being dealt with at the moment. And into the recovery area, which is rebuilding to enable the country to return to self-sufficiently. In the case of Nepal, that may take 10, 15, 20 years. So it's a long process. Just to briefly mention the UN cluster system, because that kicks in when in any sort of disaster. While the various other NGOs try to come in, they all have to be coordinated through the Humanitarian Emergency and Relief Coordinator. Each aspect of the disaster is divided up into what we call clusters. The international NGOs and local NGOs work alongside the relevant lead cluster NGO for that particular area. So, for example, in the Gurkha region, where the epicentre was located, and where Architects Without Frontiers, alongside our project partner, Aussie Action Abroad, where we'll be working in the Bagua region, and specifically the village of Vithapani. Save the Children has the lead for the Gurkha region. Now that then gets divided down into sub-regions where there's another international NGO and local NGOs work along that. It can get quite complicated, and there was a mention of people competing and egos, and you get, unfortunately, it can be quite ego-driven sometimes, unfortunately. But the majority, I should say, all people have the heart in the right spot, and they all want to do well for the people. So, for example, in Nepal shelter, the IFRC had the lead of the entire Nepal in terms of shelter. So, and groups such as Red R Australia, Red Cross, they provide surge capacity for the relevant UN agencies. Okay, onto our response. We visited Gurkha in May. Aussie Action Abroad and AWF, we working together, and we attended and participated in some shelter cluster meetings in Kathmandu. We were then able to identify the various lead, hook in with those international NGOs and then local NGOs. So we met up with the Village Development Committee, the VDC, and the District Development Committee to again get the tick of approval to work in those areas. We've identified a region called Bagua, where we'll be working, and that's brought out of an association with a local NGO who is set up in the Bagua region. So again, working alongside the NGOs. The NGO that we've been established a really good relationship now with is called HEADS, H-E-A-D-S, Nepal, Health, Education, Agriculture, something, Nepal, and we'll be working alongside them to do work. And so we're able to camp in the Bagua region, meet with the locals and understand the village needs. So we met with some of the schools to assess the temporary learning centres. We've again, Aussie Action Abroad have been able to provide funding to Global Action Nepal, who are another NGO that we've got a long-term relationship with, and they're funding temporary learning centres. The typical temporary learning centre is a bamboo learning centre, which will then have a corrugated iron sheet on top, and that provides. So one of the first things that's done in any sort of disaster is to get the kids back into school, so they have a sense of normality in their lives, and that's the idea of the temporary learning centres that are set up. Again, we met with the OCHA representative in the field to discuss and provide feedback to the areas. We met with the local NGO to discuss their response, and we also identified the region. This is the village of Bagua that you can see from a higher, village of Ithapani, which you can see from a higher area. We also met with SONA, Society of Nepalese Architects, not your student of Nepal. So the SONA are kind of like our AIA, so we were able to meet with them, and ASF Nepal and EWB Nepal. So there's lots of scope to do lots of work. ASF Nepal are working alongside EWB Nepal to be able to work out shelter solutions, and their Society of Nepalese Architects are again working alongside the government representatives to work out permanent shelter solutions. So there's a lot of good work being done in the background by a lot of good people. We were able to, as I mentioned, identify the region of Bagua, and we'll work with the local NGOs to provide temporary shelter. We will assist in the complete relocation of the village of Ithapani. The village of Ithapani is a small village in the Bagua region, and that requires complete relocation because of the land not being stable for the village. It could just slide down that part of the hill. So they've identified land, going through that process now, and there'll be so there's really good scope for planners to get involved in some master planning. One of the things that we'll be doing is again a long-term project, but constructing a community hub. We'd like to get a community centre and school and health centre all in the one sort of hub, and around that plan the village. So there's really good scope to do some good work, and there's good opportunities again for you guys to use your skills in some great ways. It's just a map now of the you can see the main areas which are affected by the earthquake, and the Gurkha region where the initial earthquake was. You see some images there, and that image there is of the village of Ithapani. So homes completely damaged or damaged beyond living capacity. So some really people going through some incredibly tough times. So that to be able to provide that community hub, that community centre, and set that up reasonably quickly is so that people have a place to go. Their temporary shelter solutions will be pretty well done, but having that community centre is so important. As a result of thinking back to the Japanese tsunami, one of the first things that they did was to build a community centre so that people have that sense of escape where people can go and escape. The relocation of the village of Ithapani, Graham Kent from Aussie Action Abroad put this together. Working with Heads Nepal, they've identified these as the items which they need. So the first thing that we'll do is do the community hub, community centre, and you can see the cost associated with new homes, temples, providing electricity, providing animal sheds. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we'll be there for the long haul. So projects for the end of this year. We'll be participating in post-earthquake construction in Gurkha and in Lamjung. We still like to have an association with Lamjung. While that was not as affected as a lot of other regions, there are schools which have where one of the classrooms might be damaged, or so there's small interventions or small work there which we can do in the Lamjung region. In the Gurkha region, again, we'll be working alongside the local NGOs to do work in Bagwa and in specifically the village of Vithapani. It's my goal that we'll be able to do works in the work to the hospice for Meitei Nepal over in Satagata, near Kakavita, way over far east Nepal. And that's some images of the village of Vithapani and 2 images of the hospice there. So the work they need doing in the hospice is some roof repairs, building a new shower facility for the girls in the hospice. They've got one shower facility, but at the moment there's another area that needs to be worked on, and we're hoping to do work down there. Now the plug. We'd like you guys to come along. Some of the University of Sydney students are already coming along, so please email. There's my email address there and my phone number, so you can contact me if you'd like to be involved. We'd like to get as many people there as we can at the end of the year, so we can do work in the Gurkha region and in the Bagwa region and in the Satagata region. I'm sorry. Just to give you an indication of cost, the cost of the trip is $3,700, and that money goes into providing the construction facilities, working alongside the local tradesmen, paying wages, etc., of paying local tradesmen's wages, and providing materials, paying for materials, and so forth. So the more people we get, the more projects we can do. Just some resources, to leave you with some resources now. Huge plug for REDR Australia. I'm on the REDR register, so that is the REDR register for search capacity, so that in disaster relief, professionals, not only construction professionals, but health workers, child protection workers, coordinators, all that can be on the register. Some great books there. Architecture and Human Dignity is a fantastic book beyond shelter. That really speaks a lot about the role of the architect in the humanitarian sphere. And finally, there's our website. We're also on Facebook. We like to be liked. Everybody likes to be liked. So like us on Facebook. And so please get in touch. Questions?